Hello everyone, my name is Ziamaro and welcome to Battlerite Sage. It's patch day today and this is one of the more significant ones since launch. If you want a quick summary of what's happened, it goes something like this. Alysia, Rukan, Ivor and Bako have received buffs, Poloma and Destiny have been nerfed, Lucy has a bit of a mixed bag but it's a buff for experienced players. Varesh has had some unexpected nerfs, and of course we have our new champion, Zander. So, let's get into what's changed. Let's start out with the champion reimbursement, because I think this is something that a lot of people were wanting. If you buy the All Champions pack, or if you've ever bought the All Champions pack, you'll get reimbursed all your gems and battle coins that you used to buy a champion prior to investing in the pack. This is to give people an incentive to buy the All Champions pack even if you've already invested some coins into buying champions. So great change there. The default loadout for all champions is now not displayed in game if you have at least one custom loadout for that champion. Sweeping the mouse over HUD elements no longer interrupts casts, so that's particularly great for people who play Destiny or Esmo. They've also added a constrained cursor to window option, so that's great for people with multiple monitor setups. Unfortunately, the zero score bug hasn't been fixed yet, but they're still working on a fix apparently. There have been a host of UI bug fixes and changes, but the most interesting one to me is that the queue size preferences are now saved according to whether casual or league is being played. So if you like to play ranked 3v3 but you prefer 2v2 in casual, the game will now remember those preferences separately. Now onto the really interesting thing. Zander. I will reserve my opinion on him for now because I still need to give him a bit of a try, but he seems incredibly strong. Now that we can see what the damage numbers are, he seems like he's a high burst damage healer, but he's actually lacking in the healing department slightly. But we'll have to wait and see. So have fun playing him today and good luck with the long queues waiting to play him. Now, while Zander is one of the most interesting parts of this patch, let's move on to the second most interesting thing. The champion updates. Alysia has received a bunch of buffs. The cooldown on her Mouse 2 has been reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. Her Arctic Wind, which is the space ability, has had the cooldown reduced from 8 seconds to 7 seconds, and the max range has been increased from 7.5 to 9. Her Flash Freeze has had its radius increased by 10%. Her Ice Block, which is her Shift Q ability, has had its duration reduced from 3.5 seconds to 2.8 seconds. That might sound like a nerf, but it actually means you get the healing over a shorter amount of time, so that's a buff. Her Snow Cone, which is her Shift E, has had the cast time increased very slightly, the duration has been decreased slightly, the total ticks has been increased, but the damage has been reduced slightly. And I think what this means is that you'll be able to freeze someone a lot quicker with your Shift E. Her Frost Nova Battlerite for her space ability has had the chill duration increased from 1.6 seconds to 2 seconds, and now if they're already inflicted with chill, then they receive a 1 second root as well. Her other space Battlerite, Twirl, has had the recast duration increased from 1.5 seconds to 1.8 seconds, and the range has been increased from 3.3 to 4. Wintry Blast now has an additional effect. It now increases Glacial Prism chill duration from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Blizzard has had its radius bonus decreased from 20% to 10%. However, Flash Freeze has had its base radius increased, so with this Battlerite it should remain about the same as it was before the patch. And finally, her Arctic Cloak Battlerite now applies lesser Glacial Prism to allies as well. Ashka has received a slight bug fix to his ultimate ability, where his ultimate Scorched Earth area wasn't dealing damage every tick, so that is now fixed. Moving on to Bako, he has received a host of new changes. His shield dash wall hit damage has been decreased from 16 to 12. However, he now stuns enemies when he pushes them into a wall as an innate ability, so he doesn't need a Battlerite for that anymore. The EX version of that ability also applies the stun. His space and EX space has had a slight fix, so it's a little more obvious which area he's going to affect. His Heroic Leap Battlerite is now partially compatible with his EX space, so it adds 3 bonus damage. His Raging Ram Battlerite has received a bug fix where his Shift E ability cooldown was being reduced by 2 seconds instead of 1 second. Dizzying Dash has been reworked from Wall Slam, so the shield dash inflicts a 15% snare for 2.5 seconds and pushes an enemy into a wall to deal 6 bonus damage. And finally, his Adrenaline Slam now only grants the War Axe bonus damage if you actually push an enemy with the shield dash. Moving on to Destiny, her Charged Bolt, which is her Mouse 2 ability, has had the max damage reduced from 32 to 30. The movement curve has been tweaked, which means she moves a little slower while she's casting it, and the projectile radius has been reduced slightly. Overall, quite a big nerf to her right click, but I think it's something that a lot of people have been asking for. Her Plasma Wall has had the snare factor reduced from 50% to 25%, but the duration has been increased from 1.2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Her transform weapon, which is the Shift Mouse 1, has had the transformation duration reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, and the shield duration has been reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. And finally, her Sizzle Battle Right now increases the snare factor instead of roots people. It also deals 6 damage when you walk through it. This makes her a little bit less anti-melee. Moving on to Esmo, his Chaos Barrage Battle Right now consistently adds 1 ammo, so it now stacks up with other sources of ammo a little bit better. And now when you pick his Bolted Battle Right, the Arcane Fire Range buff now gets removed properly when reloading the Displace. Moving on to Iva, her Boomstick, which is her Mouse 1, has had the reload time reduced from 1.1 seconds to 1 second. The Machine Gun has had the total damage increased from 140 to 160. The damage per projectile has been increased from 7 to 8. Her Concussive Shot now has a cooldown of 7 to match the Taser cooldown, and Burning Oil has had its damage increased from 21 to 27. Her Hyperspeed Battle Right now increases the reload speed by 120% instead of 100%. Her Heavy Rocket now inflicts a 0.7 seconds fading snare to enemies in the explosion area. Her Durable Shield has had the shield bonus increased from 8 to 12, and Igniting Spark no longer does direct damage and instead consumes oil to inflict burning oil on hit rather than when spell block is triggered. Jamong has had a slight bug fix. His Shift Mouse 2 ability would continue to bounce even after hitting a counter, so that won't happen anymore. Moving on to Lucy, she's had a few battle right changes. Her Vampiric Toxin now heals 3 instead of 2 per tick, so the total healing is now 9 instead of 6. Her Blast Shield has had the damage increased from 6 to 10. Her Potency Battle Right has had the damage and healing increased to 10 from 8. Toxic Reaction has actually been removed and replaced with Dynamic Solution, which increases the range and radius of Clarity Potion by 10%. And finally, her Chaos Battle Right has had a slight change. The radius has been increased from 2 to 2.2, the damage has been increased from 6 to 8, and the lesser panic duration has been increased from 1 second to 2.5 seconds. However, you now have to hit a target for the AoE effect to trigger. That means no more panicking behind walls and getting the fear even when you miss. Pestilus has had an interesting bug fix. His Scarab Pack, which is his ultimate, can no longer be dispelled. So before, the damage over time effect could be dispelled by Paloma's other side or by Lucy's Dispel Potion. So now that can't be dispelled. Let's move on to the Poloma changes. Paloma's Ghost Wolf has had the damage bounces reduced. So before it did 20, then 16, then 12, it now does 20, then 15, then 10. Her Phantasm Battle Right has had the damage reduction reduced from 40% to 33%, and the damage amplifier has been reduced from 25% to 20%. Her Spiritual Wind has been changed, so you only get the haste if you actually hit the spell block. Her Soul Essence Battle Right is now compatible with the EX version, and finally, Silverfang has had its range bonus reduced from 20% to 10%. Rook has had a few bug fixes. His endurance has been fixed so the cooldown reduction for not hitting a target is not granted when hitting shields or counters. Furthermore, Raging Bull has had a bug fix where rush cast time during Berserk was reduced by 43% instead of 60%. So that's a bug fix, but it's a slight buff. Moving on to Rukan, he has received some much needed love in this patch. His Consume has had the cooldown reduced from 9 seconds to 8 seconds. His Leech Blade Battle Right has had the effect combined with Taint. So hitting cursed enemies with Defiled Blade now heals you for 2 bonus damage, and a charged Defiled Blade heals you for 6 bonus damage. Affliction has had the amplifier duration increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. Nether Chains is now EX compatible. Cold Embrace has been combined with Death's Embrace, so if you take Cold Embrace you get the root and you get the curse. Overall, some nice buffs for Rukan. Moving on to Thorn, his Mouse 1 now only gives you 6% energy instead of 7%. On top of that, the Burrow cooldown will only start once he actually comes out of the ground. His No Escape Battle Right has had a bug fix where you couldn't recast to ascend early from the Lesser Burrow. Furthermore, the Lesser Burrow now burrows underground faster, so you have a longer recast window. And finally, we have Varesh. His Q, E, and Shift E have had the healing and damage from consuming Corruption and Judgment reduced from 8 to 6. His Devastation Battle Right has had the bonus damage increased from 3 to 4. His Kinetic Judgment is now called Kinetic Corruption, and it reduces the cooldown of kinetic energy by 3 seconds and applies Corruption on enemies hit. And finally, his Synergy now increases the factor of Corruption and Judgment by 5% when both are active on the same target. Phew! That was probably the biggest patch that I've had to cover so far. And I think what's been really great about this is it shows that Stunlock's really been listening to both the pro scene and the general community. So let's see if us, the community, were right about all of this stuff and see how it all plays out. I think some of the Poloma nerfs may not look like enough for some people. However, what they have nerfed is 3 of the most used battle rights. So let's see how it plays out. Maybe it's not enough, but maybe combined with the Destiny nerfs, maybe we'll see the fall of the Poloma Destiny meta. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, then please feel free to subscribe for more battle right guides, news, and discussion. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.